Coming up, Pakistan's summer heat is unbearable. People are dying and hospitals are struggling to treat the rising cases of heat stroke.
It's like being in an oven.
We speak with the country's highest ranked environmentalist and challenge her position on climate immorality.
I don't think you are immoral. I don't think your community is immoral. I think that we have not grown up with a grounding in this way of thinking.
Public avoidance of environmental issues.
I'd like to say that that would be, for me, an intellectually lazy assumption.
And the government's role in the devastation and human death toll during the so-called monsoon on steroids in 2022.
Is that going to happen again this year?
Look, I can say I hope not, but hope
so the government did nothing to help mitigate what might possibly come.
Pakistan's former climate minister, Rehman, is on just 2 degrees. Now,
you have great points and you sound like an interesting person, but how much of your own advice are you taking?
The reason I'm doing this show is because even today, climate change competes for attention.
You're talking about all the wars that are happening.
No, I'm not. No, young man,
what else are you talking about?
Rehman led Pakistan's Climate Authority between April 2022 and August 23. And during her tenure, she bore witness to some of the deadliest floods the country had ever seen. Weeks of torrential rain left more than 1,700 people dead, 13,000 injured, and 33 million without a place to live. Rehman has experienced a lot, along with her constituents and fellow citizens. I'll chat with her in a minute about that, but first, a quick look at her resume.
In the realm of Pakistan's environmentalism, few names resonate as profoundly as Rehman.
If the planet is burning up, we are burning up in the front line. We are the ground zero of that climate change.
Rehman had already amassed an impressive set of accolades before taking on the role of climate change minister. She was Pakistan's ambassador to the United States, held various parliamentary posts, and earned a reputation for tenacity and diplomacy. But it was her appearance at the COP27 climate summit in Egypt that brought her international fame. She led a 77-nation bloc that underscored what insufficient financing has meant for countries struggling with the economic and human costs of climate disasters.
The establishment of a fund is not about dispensing charity. It is clearly a down payment on the longer investment in our joint futures. It is a down payment and an investment in climate justice.
Convincing the globe wasn't her only challenge. Tackling environmental issues at home in Pakistan has been fraught with complexities, from bureaucratic hurdles to socio-economic disparities and geopolitical pressures. However, Rehman stuck to an approach that combined pragmatism with ambition, as she brought together international partnerships and local expertise to navigate the way forward. While she was climate minister, Pakistan unveiled its first ever national adaptation plan in 2021. That focuses on water wastage, climate-friendly agriculture, and disaster preparedness.
While the south is facing drought and overheating, the north is facing flash floods and glacial melt. So it's a combination of what I call it's really a force multiplier, climate change for Pakistan.
Rapid urbanization and industrial growth have also made the crisis worse. And heat waves have become more frequent, posing risks to people, particularly in urban areas with inadequate infrastructure.
So we are the ground zero. The heat wave came here. We had no spring. We went straight into a scorching summer. The country was, not prepared for it.
Where does your interest in environmental issues come from?
So this is not a new interest, but it's become a passion now, which I have to sometimes restrain because there are other challenges that I deal with in my political career. But this for me, takes front and center priority simply because you can living where I do, you can actually see the impacts of climate change on so many parts of our lives that I think you'd have to be fairly blind to not come to the conclusion that we need to look at what this 21st century nightmare is turning out to be.
लाइट भी नहीं होती है 49-50 तक गर्मी पहुंच जाती है घर में भी तंग होते हैं
Are you suggesting people in Pakistan look at what's happening but deny that it's happening?
I think the world is in denial. I'm sorry, there's a lot of talk about climate change. There's a lot of, there's a fair amount of hand-wringing, and there is no place, no forum where climate change is not brought in as part of the talking points everywhere in the world, everywhere now. And many of our development partners are very serious. They're very committed, and they realize the gravity and scale of the challenge globally. And also for countries like Pakistan, which are on the front line of, say, global warming right now. It's 50, it was 51 degrees in parts of Pakistan yesterday.
That
It
is
was
crazy.
Yes, it is. And then, now we have this new thing where the weather app tells you it feels like 56. Somebody reported it felt like 63 in one of our southern areas.
I'm going to be presumptuous and say that you personally have not felt that. If you have, let me know, I might be wrong. But when you speak with people in Pakistan, what does 63 degrees feels like?
63 might be an exaggeration because that's what, is being reported. But I'm sorry, we have for the last 3 years been experiencing the highest recorded temperatures on many days on the planet, and all of those are in the south of the country, which is where I'm from. The province of Sindh, the cities are Jacobabad and Dadu. They became famous for that. And then there was a city in Balochistan, again the south. Turbat was like an oven. It's like being in an oven. And you really, sometimes you can't breathe. And of course, you're right in presuming that I'm able to move to a more salubrious or cooler climate because of access to resources. And right now, my resources that I'm in Islamabad, where I have large swathes of my day job are here because my posting is federal. But my home is Sindh, and I will go back there, of course, next week. And it's sweltering there. People, are used to a summer, especially in Islamabad, where it's not so catastrophic, where it's not so debilitating. But now it's, first we got spring taken away from us in Islamabad. That happened 2-3 years ago. Now we have a season which feels like you're in a burn area.
You're
The
basically
fires,
baking alive.
you're baking alive. Yeah. And people are falling sick. You really can't expose people with underlying conditions at all to that kind of weather. Some have to work in that heat, right?
ਇੰਨੀ ਹੈ ਜੀ ਮਿਸਤਰੀ ਮਜ਼ਦੂਰ ਕੰਮ ਤੇ ਲੱਗੇ ਆ ਤੇ ਗਰਮੀ ਇੰਨੀ ਹੈ ਕਿ 10 ਮਿੰਟ ਕੰਮ ਕਰੀਦਾ ਤੇ ਕੰਮ ਹੋਏ ਨਹੀਂ ਜਾਂਦਾ
So that's just not possible. And people are just falling down like flies with heat stroke, animals, people, everybody. So it's a kind of heat paralysis that you experience. And no one's interested in hearing about it because now we are competing for attention. The reason I'm doing this show is because even today, climate change competes for attention. If it's a weather impact, extreme weather, that doesn't. Obviously, that'll get reported, the catastrophe, the chaos, the destruction, and the disruption. But climate change as a long-term phenomenon or environmental degradation, those just have to really beg for time. And competing for time is something we're all now getting used to. So appreciate you're doing this. Whatever question you want to ask me, please go ahead.
I assume when you say that the climate issues competing for time, you're talking about all the wars that are happening across the world. Pakistan
No, I'm
has
not. No, young
what
man,
else are you
I'm
talking
not.
about?
You'll see what is known as a pop influencer getting more mileage. Banksy with his art sort of quips will get more mileage. I mean, just go through social and mainstream media.
Do you
And
think
you will
people are tired of the climate issue, or possibly don't want to hear about it? Possibly because they really are too. Some people are afraid, honestly, of this doomsday, of these doomsday predictions. and literally don't want to listen to that anymore. You think that's part of it?
I think that's not it. I'd like to say that that would be for me an intellectually lazy assumption. I think human beings are generally resilient people. And I think right now they've got their algorithms screening their news consumption for them. And the clickbait they're getting is not climate. Unless there's a catastrophe, of course, then of course it's clickbait. Then, you'll get a headline that will draw either of us in. Shark drowns or dies in meltdown, or something extraordinary, and that's got a cultural feel to it. We'll all immediately open that. That's just human nature. We respond to sensation in our media consumption. But climate change is not sensational. You see, it is talking about people taking responsibility. I think what it does, it nudges a sense of the fear. I'm understanding what you're saying. I think what you're referring to is a fear of who's in charge, who's taking responsibility. There's no one button we can turn off. We can't do it in our homes. We can't do it in our countries by ourselves. So I think what happens is that everyone ends up abdicating responsibility to the other. When it's such a big problem that you alone can't solve it, then what happens is that it's somebody else's problem.
We are not producing, we are not causing climate crisis, yet we are one of the most vulnerable countries affected by climate crisis. So what is really, really required is a strong message to the world leaders. Please stop with your fossil fuels. Please stop with greenhouse gas emissions. Go ahead and pursue renewable energy sources.
I know that the COP28 and various other, every year we create new landmarks and benchmarks to operate against. But honestly, I've come to the conclusion that if we don't accelerate, many parts of the world will start now becoming uninhabitable. And the capitalist system, the market system, which we're all part of, which we can't change, is not up for the kind of regulation that is needed to reduce the fossil fuels, because somebody has to take a hit, right? You and I have to take a profit hit. We'll haggle about it for a while, but if we realize that we're going to burn our homes up, you and I will come to a conclusion that we need to spread this risk.
You made an interesting point a couple of seconds ago about Pakistan being one of the lowest emitters, yet paying a lot of the costs. I have a similar story. I'm from Trinidad. We're a tiny island in the Caribbean.
Yes.
Our biggest export is oil and gas, but because we're so small, no one takes those emissions seriously.
Yeah,
and I've noticed that many small countries, developing countries, are using the argument that our emissions don't contribute to these GHGs that people are talking about. Henceforth, they kind of continue doing whatever they're doing below the radar. Do you agree that small and developing countries should be allowed to use oil and gas to develop their countries, as the big five, the wealthiest countries have already done in decades past? Should small and developing countries be left alone?
You're asking me a real catch-22 question, and I appreciate that you've given this a thought, because that's a big question. And there is a contest and pushback from the entire global South, that certainly those that are low emitters like yourselves and us, it's very easy for us to say, look, I still need to develop, and I should have that envelope of time, that kind of capacity to be able to give my people, because at the end of the day, people want jobs, and your economy has got to drive your life experiences, right? How people experience life is related to their income, but it's also related to their direct environment. And yes, we can say that, and I, my country will also likely say that we need the push. We have so many other disadvantages, including the great onrush of overheating, and what the UN Secretary General calls it a living hell. It is. But the point is, I think we also need to take, if we don't take a fraction of responsibility, or create a timeline where we are also part of a global solution, then we're going to never become part of this existential transformational shift in thinking that is needed, to lower consumption, to lower reduction, and not just of oil and gas, of many things, because you're going to have to lower consumption generally.
On average, people in Pakistani cities are losing 2 years of their life on account of air pollution. And in Lahore, It's a staggering 5.8 years loss of life expectancy on account of air pollution. For a country that isn't as industrialized as Pakistan is, this is really alarm bells ringing.
Those kind of problems need a lot of active local solutions. And they may not be directly linked to the greenhouse gases we talk about, but they are linked to local emissions. Those could be vehicular, those could be the kind of weather we're experiencing and it all adds up to create conditions that are in winter, for instance, we have what is known as a fifth season. I call it the smog fifth season because your airplanes can't land, our motorways start shutting down. And what's worse is we have school children who can't go to school because the air is so toxic with high pollutants. Your eyes are red, so you can imagine the kind of problems, health problems people experience, lungs, reduced capacity and all that. Is that how we want to live? So generally, I think in every way we look at it, how we interact with nature, how we use resources that we have taken for granted, from water to oil to everything, to the clothes we're wearing, everything has to be rethought. And in
All right,
that,
well, let me challenge you in that,
I mean, I
Senator.
think countries need to timeline their, transitions,
I
even if
think
they're
you're saying you have great points and you sound like an interesting person, and of course you have lots of climate accolades, you speak on the topic quite authoritatively, but how much of your own advice are you taking?
So I, as a younger woman, would be very prone to say, I mean, I love textiles. I've actually studied them. And so I would be, and Pakistan, this whole South Asian region, particularly Pakistan, is one of is the greatest producer of beautiful cottons. I mean, I'm wearing a chintz right now, which is lovely, but I'm happy to say that I've had it for 10 years now.
Oh, okay.
Yes, and I've had to kick that habit. Cottons here are very cheap, silks here are handmade. So you have access to unique resources that are not just authentic, they're indigenous and they're, world-class goods. So I think what we need to do is, I have reduced my consumption. I've had to. I drive a hybrid vehicle. I'm trying to, when we are, and I was fighting a big fight for electric vehicles that are affordable to be manufactured in Pakistan in our budget session. But I think what I have been able to do at home is cut down the consumption of water greatly. I'm a freak for water consumption because I see that as a real emerging problem.
ओवरऑल पानी सिस्टम में कम हुआ है और हमारे यहाँ जो है वो नंबर ऑफ़ फैक्टर्स हैं पानी के कम होने के जिसकी जो वजूहात हैं और उनमें से एक वजह तो बढ़ती हुई आबादी है और दूसरी वजह ये है कि कुछ मिसमैनेजमेंट और लीकेजेस वगैरह जो हैं या इसके अलावा जो है वो क्लाइमेट चेंज के फैक्टर है.
Since you brought the topic of water up, the world really saw these pictures out of Sindh, where you're from, and other places like Balochistan in Pakistan.
Yeah.
And we even here at TRT were in horror. We have a few Pakistani journalists here, and they were emotional quite often. How was that situation for you and your family?
Again, my family was protected because we were living, I mean, our family home is in Karachi. It's on high ground. It's an old house, but even our windows fell through. We had a tree fall down in the Islamabad. We had a smaller house there. We had a tree fall down here. People were washed away in millions and did not have shelter. They were living under an open sky and makeshift tents.
I've seen many humanitarian disasters in the world, but I have never seen climate carnage on this scale.
मकान आपके सामने नज़र आ रहे हैं ये सब कोई तबाही हो गया गिर गए हैं सब सारे मालियात सामान मिसाल दे बक्से हैं पेटी है कपड़े हैं कोई चीज़ भी नहीं बची.
Is that going to happen again this year?
Look, I can say I hope not, but hope
So
is
the
not a
government did
plan.
nothing to help mitigate what might
No,
possibly
no,
come.
no. The province I'm from, Sindh, for instance. Now, the rest of my political career matters how, because I'm from the political party that runs Sindh, and the PVP. Our chairman Bilawal Bhutto Zardari was also the foreign minister with me, so in cabinet. So we had a very good work relationship on how to deal with climate. So we were able to we were able to go to Geneva, and the Prime Minister supported us, get what is known as the 4RF resilience funds for Pakistan, some of it. So Sindh was the prime target of the last 2022 disaster. And that's where we were busy this summer in the budgeting in obtaining the federal matching funds for that resilience recovery, where the homes that are being erected now, the new homes, because homes are just destroyed, those are being given to the woman householder of the area. So if there's a family living there, the woman gets the land title, and rural women then have a standing in their community. They're the people to be looked to, and they become immediate, they become power stakeholders in their household and their community from being invisible or discriminated entities. I mean, that's one of the way we empower women together. All our social programs that are created by the People's Party, including the famous Benazir Income Support Program, which remained working through this flood to transfer cash to people on their phones. And it was created to go only and first to women.
We pray for you from here that nothing that happened last year is repeated. But I just have about 2 minutes with you left, Senator. You once described this climate finance as a moral issue. I know the suggestion is that big oil and gas companies, coal companies, agriculture companies that overproduce and don't want to stop producing are immoral for doing so, for not realizing that people are dying and the planet is severely being harmed. But if we scale this down to individuals who litter, who waste things without looking back twice, it kind of suggests that there is a general immorality on the planet, which is why we can't seem to take hold of this, even on an individual level, and combat the climate, because we, at the end of the day, make the poor people make up the majority. Why can't we fix this issue? Are we immoral?
I'll tell you why. I think we are not immoral. I don't think you are immoral. I don't think your community is immoral. I think that we have not grown up with a grounding in this way of thinking. Even I had to educate myself, with access to, internet and all sorts of things. And and it takes very long to understand that the power of the increment is also valuable, right? Your contribution may be a tiny fraction of the change that we need, the catalytic change, but it is important. So there's those who think that change must only be, everything must happen overnight, otherwise we won't do it. Or there are those who think that, okay, if $7 trillion worth of subsidies are being given and unprecedented profits are being made by oil and gas, I will still make sure that the bottles in my house no longer are plastic, because that's cheaper, it's more affordable in Pakistan, more accessible. And yeah, that's the big change I've made in all my offices, including the Senate of Pakistan, which sees me as the plastic nag. But all our standing committees, I said, I don't care. It's a very powerful message, including PM House, including President House. So you have to start at the top, right? You have to start at the top and then tell people, okay, now you've also got to do this. Start going back to the bad old days when we all used glass bottles. We used to boil the water because tap water wasn't safe and will never be in my living, I think, in my lifetime in these economies. So go back to that. Just lug the glass bottle around and so you've got to start shaming the plastic users. And that's something we're doing. The household itself took 3 months to make a transition, because they were like, what we do, it suddenly reappear in my car. The plastic is easier, cheaper, faster, transportable and disposable. But I was like, really? This is what you're going to be eating tomorrow on your plate? So I think everyone understands this, and we need to make scarier videos for our community to make the change. Because I really, we need a coalition against plastics. We don't realize what kind of
Not just plastics. We have to shame the drivers, the meat eaters, almost everyone really. But you know, something, Senator, I think I could speak with you for hours, but unfortunately we're out of time. It was a real pleasure getting to know you. I'm glad Mikhail told me all about you. And hopefully you feel free to come back anytime on the program. This is Mikhail, by the way.
Hi, Assalamualaikum, Mrs.
How are
Rehman.
you?
I'm Maham's son, by the way. Really appreciate
Oh, yes,
your
yes.
time.
She's the one who got through to me.
Thank you so much again. Would love to see
This
you in
has been
Karachi
great fun. I'm happy
sometime.
to do it all the time. So,
Super, I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. We hope you
not
have
at all.
a great rest of the day and a fantastic weekend.
You too. All the best.
Thank you so much, Senator. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye.
So, Senator, I have to be honest. I had to do a bit of research before this interview, and I spoke with my trusted producer, who is Pakistani, by the way. He absolutely adores you. And his name is Mikhail Madden. He says that you are a climate superstar. So I like your expression.